class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a great start to their week. In this class, we are focusing on questions and answers about the IELTS exam using one of our exam books. These lessons are brought to you by aehelp.com for academic version of the test. And for the general version of the exam, check us out at gieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have 6 original practice exams, over 100 hours of video lessons, and a fully interactive course for you. This is a members chat class. It's an unusual class. We don't have class usually Mondays and Tuesdays, but we will have a class where everybody can chat in about 90 minutes to finish the Task 2 essay that we started yesterday. Hi, Carolina. There's one of our members joining in, followed by Hassan. Nice to see you in class on time. While we wait for a few more members to jump in, I will show you our websites real quick. This is the academic one here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join the premium package, or you can even try it for free when you click that green try demo button. And for the general version of the test, it is this green background, similar layout. Again, click that big red button for the premium package and the green button to try the course for free. Also, you can download our app, Academic IELTS Help, from your Google Play and Apple App Store. Just look for our logo. You can link the app to your web account so that you're learning from the same account, which is a really great learning experience when you are on the go. If you have questions about our products or about the exam, just send me an email, Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, at aehelp.com, and I'll be happy to answer. Mauro, welcome, a new member. Nice to see you in class. I see that you have exclusive videos level membership, so just make sure, Mauro, to send me an email here, and then I can get you those exclusive videos. Cool. Welcome aboard. If you have questions about the exam, now is a good time to ask them. Our books are available on Amazon. Also, search for AE Helps Academic IELTS and GE Helps General IELTS. Hi, Ferdovs. Good to see you in class. Okay, so members, this is kind of our usual class. It's going to be questions and answers. So start thinking about what questions may have come up during your studies. And again, we will have task 2, finishing that essay from yesterday, shortly after this class. And tomorrow we have one more class at 15 o'clock Central European time, which will be a speaking part 3 where everybody can join in. Then from the 20th to the 25th, I will be away. I will be in Austria doing a little bit of R&R, which means rest and relaxation. One of my favorite hobbies, skiing. I'll be there doing a little bit of glacier skiing, which is fun. Of course, for those of you who know that I'm Canadian, that might not be a big surprise. I figured I might as well do that while I'm here in Europe. Hi, Barendra. Barendra, I did get your email about that Task 2 question. I'll think about putting that in for a members chat class after I get back, okay? So I did get that email, and as you know, I responded because I saw that you replied to my response, so that's great. Okay, thanks, Ferdovs. Now that I'm a dad, I tend to be a little bit more on the safe side, so I won't be doing any double black diamond skiing. I'll be sticking to the single black diamonds at most. For those of you who are skiers, you probably know what that means. Double black diamond is the most extreme type of ski course. And then their colors before that: blue, red, green, and bunny hill. That's the international measure for ski slope difficulty. Thank you for the emojis, Carolina. All right, so let's start it off. Let's do a little bit of Q&A. I know a lot of people are doing exams these days, so I'm just going to open it up. Any question that you might have. Let's just start with it. If you don't have any questions, I can definitely come up with some that I know are popular questions for students these days, but I definitely want to give our members the chance to just throw some questions out at me. Whatever section you might be curious about, the listening, reading, writing, speaking. It can be a specific question. It can be a general question. You can ask me about the test, about how it's proctored. Some people ask, what's the difference between the IDP and the British Council? Nothing much, really. They're mostly the same. British Council, I think, tends to be a little bit more organized at times, but that's not always true either. They do have the same test on the same days, so whichever one is more convenient for you, I would recommend doing. So, all right. So we got a good number of members. Go ahead, fire away some questions. Anything. No question is silly. If you're thinking it, there's a good chance that somebody else might be thinking it too, out of the 100 people that are currently watching. Hi, Mauro. Again, I'm really happy that you joined up. That's great. All right. Okay, I'll throw out a question then for you. This is kind of a hot topic these days. What are the 4 categories of band score descriptors for the writing and speaking section of the exam? Let's start with 1. So how do examiners mark the writing section? Does anybody have an idea around that? Oh, Hassan, that's a good question. I'll get to that. Okay, so Hassan's got a good question. All right, I'll write that down, Hassan, while you're thinking about the answer for my question. So Hassan says, how can we proofread effectively? That's a very, very good question, Hassan. Okay. So how can you edit and proofread your work effectively? Okay, it's a great question. Okay, so the first one, how do examiners mark the writing section? They look, I'll just quickly give you the answer. They look at 4 criteria, and then we can come back to this if we have time. Oops. Missing R, 4 criteria. They look at 1, grammar and coherence. They look at lexical resource. They look at task completion. Let's separate those 2. They look at grammar, coherence, lexical resource, and task completion. Okay, those are the 4 areas that they look at. All right, so that was just a little tidbit there. We can go into that more. There'll be a video coming out on this part here soon on our channel. Okay, let's go to Hassan's question. So Hassan says, how can we proofread effectively? That's a really good question. Okay, so let's give that context, Hassan. So you write a task 2, or let's make it personal. I write a task 2 essay. How can I check it to make it better? Okay, there's definitely some good advice I can give you for that, Hassan. Okay, number 1, proofread it right after you are finished and 1 day later. Okay. So, Hassan, what a lot of students do is they will write an essay, and then, especially if you're doing it in class, what will often happen is you just proofread it within an hour or immediately right after, and you'll look for some mistakes in grammar, word choice, coherence, and so on. And then you maybe find some corrections, but it seems like what you wrote is good, and you're like, well, I don't really see any mistakes, or I can't catch many mistakes. That's because the way our brain works is when we complete a job, in the moment, it usually seems like we did the best possible. However, it's a really good idea to come back to your writing 1 day or 2 days later and then reread it again. Oftentimes, when you proofread your work with a day or two apart, then you will find a lot more mistakes. So you often realize there are many more corrections a day or two later. Okay, that's because you give your brain time to process what you have written, and you get a different perspective. Okay, the problem that we have when we look at our work right away is if we write an essay, this is our essay here, this pen, and when we look at it after we finish writing it, we have a lot of difficulty looking at it from a different perspective. But when you wait a day or two, then suddenly you start looking at your essay from different angles, and that gives you more insight into how you could have done better. Okay, so that's one of the important steps that I can give you to help proofread. Number two, I see there are more questions coming up now, but this is a really good question by Hassan, and it's one that many students don't pay enough attention to. So I really want to encourage you to work on your proofreading strategy. Okay. Number two, so this is, of course, Hassan, this is at home while you're practicing. In the exam, if you are a very good writer and you can save 5 minutes from your task 2 or 2-3 minutes from your task 1, then you can proofread your work also. Many students don't have that much time. They're just happy to get the task completed. So the other one that you can do is use software to point out mistakes. And of course, the two that many of you are probably familiar with are Microsoft Spell Check and Grammar Check. Okay. And then, of course, the other one that's very popular these days, and I highly recommend using it, even the free version is very good, is Grammarly. So if you're doing the paper-based exam, then write your essay by hand, of course, practice writing by hand. Our brain works different. Afterwards, you can type it into the computer. That's one level of proofreading. And then the computer can run Grammarly and Microsoft Spell and Grammar Check, and then you can catch more mistakes, Hassan. So you can get even more feedback. And again, for home, the third one is always try to get your work to somebody else. So don't be shy. I'm working on the speaking partner list members. I haven't forgotten about that. Another way that you can use that connection, so I'll get that list to all of you shortly. Another way that you will be able to use that list, not just as speaking partners, but you can actually use that as proofreading partners as well. So send each other your essays and try to get some feedback. It's a really good way to learn as well, okay? So keep that in mind, okay? So once we set up the final list for speaking partners, our members know what I'm talking about here. If you're a member and you don't know what I'm talking about, please send me an email. So once we set up our final list for speaking partners, you can also use this list to send each other essays and get what's called peer review and feedback. Okay? So oftentimes, again, it's getting that perspective from others. Is that clear, what I just mentioned there? Are you picking up what I'm putting down about this peer review and using your peers to give you feedback? Maybe we can set up a scenario where you can post it and then anybody can give you feedback on your essay. Okay? So those are some ways to do the proofreading when you're getting ready for your exam, Hassan. Okay, good. Now, of course, Hassan, maybe your question is also, you're also asking, how can I proofread in the official exam, so in the real exam? So this is before when you are practicing. Okay, and then, of course, Hassan, you might be also asking me, I'm just guessing here, but you might be also asking me, how do I proofread during the exam? Which is also a good question. Okay, so first of all, and I know some of you are going to be like, Adrian, you're crazy. I'm just happy to write 250 words. But again, remember that quality in task 1, task 2 is more important than quantity. Okay? So writing a clear essay is more important than writing a long essay. Okay? So ideally, it means in the perfect world, you can leave 3 minutes for review in task 1 and let's say 4 minutes, a little bit more time in task 2. Okay. All right. So when you practice this, if you're like, okay, I'm confident I can write 270, 80 words and still have a few minutes for proofreading, which is very good to do that, then the first thing that you want to, or the first kind of mistake that you want to look for is coherence mistakes. This means don't worry too much about details. Instead, review your thesis statement. Okay, remember your thesis statement is extremely important for coherence. Okay, if you can find a mistake in your thesis statement and make it better, there's a good chance you can save yourself half a band score. Okay, so review your thesis statement, your topic sentences, and your conclusion argument statement. Okay. If you find a mistake there, correct those. So don't get lost in details like, oh, maybe there's a synonym for this word, or oh, I think this is maybe like an I instead of an A in this word. It's a spelling mistake. So sometimes when students are proofreading, they're looking for spelling mistakes or synonyms. Don't do that. Look for the big mistakes. The big mistakes are the coherence mistakes. That's what you want to catch. Okay. So pay attention to those coherence mistakes. Those are what hurt your score the most. Okay? So that's what you should be reading for. Okay? Does it make sense? All right? Vandana, welcome to our group of members. Happy to have you on board. Okay, so that's a bit about proofreading. There's a lot more there. We could probably spend many more minutes on proofreading, but I do want to get to some other questions. I saw some more coming up. Those are the most important ones that come to mind for me right now that I always tell students. So look for those key mistakes during the exam when you're proofreading, okay? Coherence mistakes, all right? And then you can look for tense mistakes like the word will or an incorrect past tense or present perfect. Those are usually coherence mistakes as well. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. So Moro is saying, I sent you my result and asked you to advise me for a reading score, please, as my reading score was very low, whereas I need to boost it to 7. Okay, cool, Moro. I will check out the email, and then I'll take a look at it and give you a little bit of feedback on what's going on. Okay? So make sure to read every day, Moro. Okay. Are you reading every day, Moro? And if yes, what are you reading? Okay. The one sure way to boost your band score is to make sure that you're reading every day. All right. Preeti is asking, is it good to read solved speaking cue cards? Roshni, I do have examples of students proofreading, because we do that for students, so we edit their work and give feedback, but I don't have permission from students to use that in a live class, so that's why I can't just suddenly give you an example of proofreading, okay? If you think about some of the Task 2 classes that I hold, Roshni, you can see me do proofreading on my own work, okay? Yeah, Moro, typical news articles for everyday reading, it's okay, but it's not enough. You need to read more connected information like a book. I really, really highly suggest, Moro, choosing a biography, so the story of a person, as I've mentioned in previous classes, like Steve Jobs or something, and reading that. So to improve reading, don't just read short articles, but also read novels in English. Okay? It's very, very, very effective to improve your reading, to read a novel, Moro. So choose a biography. I recommend biographies. They're really good usually. That interests you, that keeps you interested, for at least 30 minutes a day. Okay? Yeah, so just reading the news on your phone, Moro, it's not enough. Okay? All right, Preeti, is it a good idea to read solved speaking cue cards? Do you mean, Preeti, like, is it a good idea to practice from sample answers to cue cards? Because if that's your question, Preeti, then yes, it is. So definitely it is good to look at sample speaking responses to questions and cue cards. But don't get lost memorizing templates. This type of language gets low band scores. Okay? But definitely for practice, Preeti, it's a good idea. So you can see how an effective response is put together, the structure of it. Absolutely. Okay? All right. Yeah, generating ideas it's good. It's good to give you some ideas, but don't get lost on the templates. So use it as an information source, not as a solution to the responses. Okay? All right, Roshni says, while reading, I can have the same speed until the third paragraph and feel rush and not having confidence in my answers. Okay, Roshni, that's a good question. So I think, Roshni, one way to rephrase what you're asking is, how can I maintain speed and focus while retaining information in a reading passage? I think that's a question that a lot of students ask, Roshni. So how can I keep the same speed and focus, not feel rushed, while retaining information in the reading passage? Okay, keep in mind that slow and steady wins the race. Okay, it's the turtle and the hare. All right. So if you read a bit slower, let's say 10%, but understand 25% more, you will be much faster and more accurate giving correct responses to the questions. So keep that in mind, Roshni, that you have to find the right balance between reading speed comprehension and giving answers. Okay, so that's one, Roshni. The other one is remember what I've said. So use visualization and critical thinking to keep a mental catalog of the information in the passage. This means read actively, not passively. Okay? It's really easy to fall into passive reading. Okay? Make the information interesting for you, Roshni. I know that in the exam, there are lots of different topics, and some of the topics seem very distant, very uninteresting for students. But you can't let that happen in your thinking when you're practicing and when you're sitting in the real exam. You have to imagine that it's the most amazing and incredible information that you've ever come across in your entire life. Okay? So engage the information. Make your mind think that it is very interesting and valuable for you. Okay, and that does take practice. All right. Okay, Preeti's asking, can I start answering from the third passage? So is it possible to start with passage 3 and then go to passage 2 and then the first one? Yes, but you have to keep in mind, Preeti, that usually the first passage is the easiest and the second is more difficult and the third is most difficult. So you can start the reading section in any order with passage 2, 3, or 1. However, do remember that generally passage 1 is the easiest and 3 is the most difficult. Okay? There are certain tools that the examiners use to make it this way with the questions, with the topics. Passage 1 is usually something very physical, like talking about pyramids or tigers or some topic where you can see it, you can touch it, it's easy to visualize, it's more connected. Passage 2 and 3 can be more abstract topics, like something about art, something about society, something about psychology, philosophy. So a topic that's more difficult to comprehend because it's not tangible. So you should start with topics that are tangible, that are physical, in the physical world, and you should leave topics that are abstract or intangible for later on. But having said that, if, and this is an interesting point, if one of the passages is your cup of tea, it means your area of expertise, then start with that passage. So let's say, Preeti, that you're a biology student and passage 2 is a topic in biology, then it might be a good idea to start with that passage because you will be more confident. The terms may be more familiar. You've seen those words in English more often in your studies, in your reading. So start with passages that are familiar, okay? Sometimes that's not passage 1. Sometimes the most familiar passage might be passage 3 for you, okay? So keep that in mind. All right. Roshni, speed reading, so where you're practicing speed reading, that's for improving your fluency. So that's for being able to read fast. That's not for comprehension, so don't confuse the two, okay? That's when I was explaining that you can increase your reading fluency and you can increase your coherence or your comprehension, and then you can put fluency and comprehension together. Okay, but speed reading is simply to push your boundaries of fluency. Okay. Hassan is asking, generally speaking, how can we minimize our mistakes as much as possible in the reading and listening? Okay, that's an interesting question, Hassan. I like the way your brain works. So, Hassan says, generally speaking, how can we reduce mistakes in listening and reading? Okay, so some general answers, Hassan, for your question. Number one, stay focused and confident throughout these sections. Okay, so another way, of course, is don't lose yourself to anxiety and fear. All right. Fear and anxiety are the enemy. So it sounds cliche or it sounds generic, but Hassan, really, it's just a matter of controlling your mind, staying focused, staying confident. Okay, that's one. All right. Two, stick to strategy. Okay, so don't leave your strategy. All right, what happens, and this usually happens after the first step in the reading and the listening, is when the student starts to panic. They start to get a bit of fear because maybe they lost their place in the audio and the listening, or they feel like there's not a lot of time left in the reading. Then they start to panic, and then they start to lose strategy. So that's when students will suddenly start to just pick random answers. They'll just suddenly start to skim and scan for answers, and that's a very quick downhill nosedive, okay? So if you've practiced your strategy before the exam, don't suddenly throw that out the window because you're feeling a little bit of panic. Take a deep breath, stay focused, and keep going. And again, Hassan, I know that might be like, yeah, okay, I've heard that 1,000 times, but that is the most general way to minimize your mistakes. Another one, Hassan, that might be a little bit more specific is do not change answers. In most cases, students change correct answers to incorrect answers. Do not second guess yourself. Okay? It's another common situation. It's really painful to see as a marker of the exam when we see that the student gave the correct answer, then they erased it or they crossed it out and then gave the incorrect answer, probably again because they were panicking. So in 95% of the situations, the best policy is just stay with your original answer. Once you've chosen that answer, stick with it, don't change it, just keep going. Okay? So that's another more specific point to follow for keeping those scores high. Okay? Another one, Hassan, and this is kind of, I guess it kind of is more detail on this point one about staying focused, is don't think about anything else but the exam. other students, the light in the room, the buzz in the audio, the crumbs in the examiner's beard. Okay, so again, it's this stay focused, but a lot of times I've seen this before where I can tell that a student's losing focus. They're daydreaming. They start to drift. So just stay focused, okay? Remember, if you do poorly on one part, like listening part 3, it doesn't mean that you can't do well on listening part 4. So let bygones be bygones, okay? If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. It's water under the bridge, okay? So this is the idiom in English, water under the bridge. It means it happened, it's gone, you can't worry about it. Okay, it's water under the bridge, right? Preeti's asking, is Cambly helpful for speaking? Yes, absolutely, Preeti. Cambly is a very good app. It lets you connect with a native English speaking tutor anywhere, anytime. Of course, it's a little bit pricey because they're using North American pricing models. Their teachers are native English speakers, so they work in more of a Western economy. So it's a little bit pricey, but it's very effective. You get very focused, one-on-one professional native English speaking help anywhere, anytime. So if it fits your budget, by all means, it's very, very effective. Absolutely. Okay. Okay, Ferdov says, on the speaking part, the examiner stopped me with hand gestures, not with words. Is this allowed? Ferdovs, that's definitely awkward. I'm not sure why they would have done that. Okay. In this case, Ferdovs, I would just keep talking until they actually stop you verbally. Okay. So that's an interesting one for Dobbs. I've never heard that before, but I can imagine. I mean, there's a lot of students and a lot of examiners worldwide. So only pay attention to the verbal communication of the examiner in the speaking section. I'm not sure if they were trying to help you out with that for Dobbs. Maybe they were thinking that if they don't tell you verbally to stop, it might get you to focus more on the controlling idea of the question or the cue card, and they were trying to be sneaky and help you out so it's not on the recording. But you should really only be paying attention. So what I would have done for Dobbs in that situation is just kept talking until the examiner actually asks me the next question or says, okay, that's enough, let's go to the next question. Okay, so only pay attention to the verbal communication of the examiner in the speaking, especially because body language can be misunderstood easily. And perhaps he or she, I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman for Dobbs, but perhaps he or she was just swatting a fly. Okay? So I know that sounds funny, but we do miscommunicate even verbally and with body language especially. So maybe there's some kind of a fly in front of their eye that you can't see, and they're just trying to get that fly away from them, a little fruit fly or something. Who knows? Okay. All right. Ame is asking if the required aim is a band 7.5 overall, what part should I practice the most? Reading, listening, writing, or speaking? Ame, you should always focus the most on your weakness. Okay? So, what should I practice the most if I need a band 7.5 overall? Okay, the best answer I can give you is focus on your weakest skill. Okay, so if your weakest skill is speaking, then speak lots. If your weakest skill is writing, then write lots. One skill, though, that you should focus on no matter what your weakness is reading. Okay, both silent and aloud reading. Okay, because reading helps to improve all domains of communication. Okay, so focus on your weakest skill, always focus on reading. And this goes back to Moro's question. I'm not sure if you're still here with us, Moro. I haven't seen a statement from you or a question from you in a bit, but reading is especially important. It strengthens all of the other skills, especially reading aloud. Here's kind of a question back to you. How many of you are members? Oh, there you are, Moro. And again, this helps with your question also, Moro, about the reading. How many of you actually practice reading aloud for 10 to 15 minutes in English daily? And, be honest. I'm going to explain why that's important. So do you read aloud every day? Do you read aloud? Okay, that's my question to you. It's a very important question. And the reason why, Moro says I do, but I get bored after 5 minutes. Okay, Moro, if you get bored after 5 minutes, try to pay more attention to pronunciation and intonation. Attention to punctuation. So don't just read like da 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 da, but actually read with an up and down, just like the author intended, with the periods, the commas, the semicolons, and enunciate. Okay. Okay. Aloud reading, and this is coming from my psychology major. So aloud reading is exceptionally effective. It's called multiple sensory integration learning. It uses your eyes, mouth, which is your muscles of the face, and ears. Okay? And of course, while you're reading aloud, pay attention to meaning. It's even more challenging than when you read silently. Okay? So that's one of the big reasons why reading aloud is so effective, because effectively you are doing listening exercise, you're doing reading exercise, you're doing speaking exercise all at once. Okay? All right. Ferdovs says, I got overall 6.66, reading 6.5, but I need 6.5. Whew, Ferdovs, you are really close. Students, when you're really close, Ferdovs, here's a really important point for you to keep in mind. So when you're really close to your needed band score, don't get down on yourself. Okay? Don't get down on yourself is another idiom or expression, which means don't become depressed. Okay? Instead, use this as a source of motivation. Meaning, don't give up when you are so close to the finish line, okay? And again, I say that because so many students, when they're so close to their needed band score and they just don't get it, then they're like, oh, what a bummer, I didn't get it, this is terrible, I hate this exam, now I have to go back and sit the exam again, and they get depressed and they're sulking, and I respect that it's a lot of money and so on, but instead use it as encouragement. So, of course, the other idiom that maybe many of you are thinking of right now is see the cup as half full, not half empty. Okay? So instead, look at it from the perspective of, wow, I was that close. I was only 0.5 away. So for Dobbs, you're very close. And the difference between a 6 and a 6.5 for Dobbs is not terribly difficult to achieve. So if you keep pushing, keep studying, it might take you a few weeks, maybe a couple months, but you're definitely very close, okay? Remember, life is long. It's not a 2-hour Hollywood movie. We got a good 80, 90 years these days, hopefully. So just push forward. You got lots of time, push forward, focus on the present, revise your strategies, maybe add new learning materials, try to change up what you were doing before, so don't get stuck in the same system, okay? Reinvent your learning and use your score as a source of encouragement. A 6.66 and a 6.5 means that you're a fluent user of the English language in listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and that is exceptional. Okay, that's really good. A lot of people would love to have that score for Doves. So find courage and strength in that. Okay. All right. So, any other questions? So those were some really good questions, students. And some of my responses might be redundant. You might have heard them many times before, but it's good to be reminded of these important thoughts. Okay? Not just reading needs practice, Manal. You definitely want to practice all of the components, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. But definitely you're right, Manal, that reading does need attention. Okay? So Hassan is saying, from a psychology perspective, how can we sharpen our focus and avoid distraction in the listening section when we listen for more than 6 to 7 minutes? Hassan, funny enough, the quick answer that comes to my mind is going back to reading novels, okay? So in order to have sustained attention, you need to have practice for sustained attention, okay? To develop sustained attention span, you must practice long-term attention by reading novels, not just short stories, by watching full films in English without stopping, by listening to lengthy podcasts and interviews. Okay. So stretching our attention span is a skill that requires practice. Absolutely. Okay. So these days, especially because our lives are so hectic, and we are much more surrounded by situations that require just short attention spans, like a 2-minute mobile phone game, a quick coffee break, a 2-minute advertising that we see on the street as we walk by, or a poster or something. So our life these days seems to be full of these very short little segments and pieces. And so our attention spans are very, very short. And this is actually reflected in a lot of our modern day culture. A lot of media is focused around these little snippets like Facebook, Instagram, so on, Twitter. It's like they're just these little pieces. One really good exercise that you're already doing to improve your attention span, Hassan, is joining these classes. So as you know, these live streams are roughly 50 minutes to an hour long, and that means that you're here, you're listening to me, we're holding a dialogue back and forth for 50 minutes to an hour straight. And that's definitely helping all of our viewers that stay from the beginning to the end to increase your focus and your attention span. So that's already a good practice, Hassan. That's very good. Okay. Moro says, I'm really keen to take the IELTS exam on the computer. However, my typing competency is horrible. What do you recommend? Moro, I've got a great answer for you. Okay. So I want to take the computer-based exam, but my touch typing is terrible. What should I do? Okay, here I've got great advice for you, Moro. Search for rapid typing tutor, and Carolina will know what I'm talking about because I've suggested this to you. Carolina, are you using this piece of software, Rapid Typing Tutor? It's free, totally free. Somebody was really, really awesome to create this absolutely free, no advertising, nothing, as far as I've seen it. There's Carolina. Carolina says, yes, it's great. Okay, cool. Carolina, I'm really happy you started using that. So search for Rapid Typing Tutor. It's totally free. It will not only improve your typing in English, but you will also be reading, learning grammar, and vocabulary, and improving your hand-eye coordination. Okay, so check out that piece of software. That's a brilliant way to improve your English skills because, of course, this software is in English, so you're typing the words in English. You might have to, not you might, you probably will have to set up your keyboard for an English keyboard. I highly recommend doing that anyway, okay? I'm always amazed when students are preparing for the IELTS exam, especially the computer-based, and they're using a non-English keyboard. Don't do that. In fact, go on Amazon and order yourself an English layout keyboard so that you can switch it, okay? There's quite a few fairly cheap wireless keyboards that you can just, with a USB, connect to your computer and you can switch it up, okay? So that's good. Pavan says typing.com is also a good website. I haven't checked that out, Pavan, but thank you for that information. So that's my last piece of advice for today, is use an English keyboard, okay? It's very important, okay? I'm always weirded out when students send me an essay and I can tell right away just by looking at it at first glance that it was not written with an English keyboard. And I'm like, ugh. All right, so make sure you do that. All right, members, a lot of really great questions. We got some excellent dialogue going in this class. I hope you picked up some good general tips and ideas, as well as some specific points and suggestions that will help you to prepare yourself more. The highlights for this Q&A, definitely reading aloud as well, practicing your typing. Use Rapid Typing Tutor if you're using an English keyboard. And of course, to stay focused, you have to engage yourself in exercise that demands long-term attention, students, not just jumping 15-minute activity to another 15-minute activity, but 1 hour activity. And again, you're doing a great job by joining in on these classes. There will be one more class coming up to finish our task 2 essay in 30 minutes. For all of our viewers, check us out at aehelp.com, gieltshelp.com. This is for academic. This is for general version of the exams. By the way, our websites are set up so that you can learn from them quickly if you only have 10 minutes, but there's definitely a lot of content there that will require you to have sustained attention. So make sure you use the website. Okay, cool. I will catch hopefully most of you in 30 minutes time. That's it for this class. Have an awesome rest of your Monday, and hopefully I will see you in a bit. Bye for now.